using the new Federation DLC. That would have come out probably about a month ago by the time this goes live. This video is going to be using some of that new content because I want to show off some of the Federation stuff, but I also want to try out one of the new origins, and we'll talk about that in a moment, because this episode is going to primarily focus on the building of the Empire and looking at the initial start, and then we'll probably move forward with actually, playing the game in the next one, just so people can skip past this easily if it doesn't interest them to see the beginning stuff. So I kind of created an empire that I'm just going to walk through here, the Vatnaka Empire. So we'll just take a look at the edit for a moment so we can walk through it. When you build an empire, you basically get to choose everything. There's the appearance, which there are tons of groups which have lots of options behind them, from robots to just plain humans or human-like aliens. I went with a fungal empire just to be different. These guys seemed very authoritarian, which was kind of what I was looking for with this empire when I was thinking of it, because I want to build Hegemony and try and unite the galaxy under that. And well, actually, we'll get into that in a little bit. The species name, I just random generated until I had something I liked. Vatnaka sounded cool to me. The plural and adjectives are pretty much left the same, which makes it very easy to say for me, though perhaps not the most creative. Sorry for that. One of these days I'll learn to turn my work phone off. I'm just not used to having a work phone at home, but the world is a little interesting right now, let's say, at any rate. So name list, another part of customization. It allows you to select what you want your leader names to be, ship, fleet, and planet names to be randomly generated from. There's about 4 for each race, or not race, each appearance style that you have. You don't have to choose one based on your appearance style, but I tend to use this as a way to force myself to have different styles of names. Otherwise I might stick to my favorite every time. I chose this one because it had Glabber Globber in it as a name. Just seemed great to me, so I ran with it. Traits is one of the first times you get to do some actual customization of how your species will play in this game. You begin with 2 trait points. We currently have 0, and I think in total you can pick 5 traits. Yeah, 5 traits. And then what you do is you choose from a bunch of positive and negative modifiers to balance out, the benefits you want. There's lots of different things you can choose from. There's ones that give you your population are better at individual jobs. For example, Algarian here gives you plus 15% to producing food, or your populations do. Thrifty, plus 25% to trade value. Natural engineers, physicists, they're all bonuses to individual ones, and these cost 1 point, where thrifty costs 2 points. Extremely adaptive gives you a massive bonus to habitability, what planets you can colonize. Non-adaptive is the opposite. It gives you a negative penalty to what planets you can habitat. I can't speak right now. Colonize, let's go with. And so you just kind of pick the ones that fit what you want to do. Because I'm envisioning sort of trying to unite the galaxy under one style, under the Hegemony, I felt that conformists would fit this authoritarian style of government quite well. So I wanted this one. It gives you plus 30% attraction to your governing ethics. So the people in this game, your population, and eventually you'll get other populations in your empire, they can be distracted by other styles of thought. They can be influenced by other empires, by events that happen, by all sorts of things, and they can drift away from the government's goals, or the player's goals in this case. This makes them 30% more likely to not only stay where they are, but for other species to join in our style. So it's useful. Unfortunately, the game tends to lead to diversifying anyway, but I think it's factored that way because we see that on Earth. We tend to, fracture. I also grabbed slow breeders. I got it in my head that because we were a fungal species, we would grow slowly. I don't entirely know why, because in reality, there's plenty of fungal growth on Earth that grows very quickly. But I was not thinking of those when I designed this. So I grabbed slow breeders for a minus 10% population growth speed. And I did this because it gave me -2, so it gave me the ability to add 2 more abilities to this, in which I used to grab intelligence. Intelligence is my favorite and almost certainly overused ability for one of these people. I don't know why. Well, actually, I do know why. It's science. This is a future game. Science is cool. We want science to get the cool technology and build up strong armies, and just, it leads us to things like getting ring worlds later, right? So it's always very tempting to grab something that gives you large bonuses to research. And getting ahead of other species with research can be an extreme assistance to your empire. So I grabbed it. I suspect, and I've never really actually read into this, but I bet you this is perhaps one of the most overused of the traits, but it's just great. So I grabbed it. Next, we chose our planet type. This is very cool because you have these 3 bands of 3 planets, and they represent what is near, or you pick which one is your culture's primary. So we're going with tropical because just to me that fit, being a fungal nation. This is the best type of planet for us. I think it's a 80% bonus to colonizing planets that are tropical. But if we look at these square boxes around some of the planets, it also means that we get, and I think it's a 60% habitability bonus to continental worlds and ocean worlds, because they're close enough to tropical worlds that our species can live with some degree of comfort on any of these styles of planets. We do not, however, colonize planets outside of this bracket with that same degree of grace. So over here, we have alpine, arctic, and tundra worlds, which we won't like. And then on the other side, we have desert, arid, and savanna worlds, which we also will not appreciate living on. That makes it interesting because it to begin with, in the beginning of the game, you're only really going to want planets that fit your core realm of adaptability, where you like to live. Later on, you can get robots and, frankly, just other species from other empires that will be willing to colonize these other planets for you and happy to live there. And that can be a really good route to go to keep expanding. Or you can get terraforming tech and terraform them into the type of planets you like. All sorts of really good options on that front. There are 2 types of planets that are not in here. I don't know if you heard that, but my kitten just came in the room and coughed at the mic, so I apologize if you did, but I don't have the heart to keep her out of the room. What was I saying now? Okay, there are 2 other planet types that exist here. There are Gaia worlds, which are just fantastic for everyone, and as you can imagine, hard to find. And there are tomb worlds, which are not as hard to find, but they're just devastated worlds with absolutely nothing on them, 100% barren basically. Almost no species like to live on tomb worlds. There are some, but it's super rare. City appearance is just the naming your home planet is also over here. I just went with Kanu. Nice thing with building your own empire is however I decide to pronounce these is just how it is. I don't have to worry about proper pronunciation. The starting solar system is an option if you want to pick a specific one like Sol. I did not, because this went just random's always the most interesting to me. City appearance is what your buildings look like. I also kind of like with the name list, I tend to choose the one that goes with the species type I took, so fungal city types. It's again a way to force me to always use different ones. Otherwise, I would probably always end up with the avian cities because I just like them. Origins is perhaps the most interesting addition of the most recent Federation DLC, as it lets you lets you set the pattern of your species before you've even taken control of it, which gives you a lot of control for building out options. So there's really cool ones. The mechanics here, which lets you begin with 8 population of robots, the technology and infrastructure to build more, and robots are 5% cheaper to upkeep. This is awesome. I've had a lot of fun playing around with this start. It's just cool. You have syncretic evolution over here, which gives you 12 populations of a subservient species. So you begin with slaves. Maybe not the most pleasant concept in the world, but very effective if you're building an evil empire. And then there's a whole bunch which we can just real quickly take a peek. There's prosperous unification. You just begin with more population and 2 extra districts. Shattered Ring is perhaps my favorite, but just because I like ring worlds. They're really cool. They're actually pretty powerful, and it's a very different feeling start because it's very different than living on a planet. But the ring world is mostly destroyed when you get it. You only have about 1/4 of the ring intact. So later on, if you get the technology for megastructures, you can repair it up. But to begin with, that's how they balance it. It's mostly broken. Post-apocalyptic, we destroyed our own planet. Our planet is now a tomb world, and we have the ability to live on tomb worlds. I think I've not tried this. I think this would be a really interesting start because sometimes you do see a lot of tomb worlds out there. But since it's a randomly generated galaxy, you never know. Life-seeded, you begin on a Gaia world. It's slightly smaller because it's a Gaia world and it's generally pretty powerful. This is a cool start. I fear this start because there's not a lot of Gaia worlds out there, and I kind of wonder how that would go because I don't think you can... Yeah, other types of planets are undesirable. Your species will not have anything to do with them. That's an interesting way to go. Galactic Doorstep, you begin with a gateway on your system, which we'll talk about later. Scion, you start as a vassal of a fallen empire, which we'll talk about fallen empires a little bit later. Well, I guess real quickly, they are what used to be galaxy-spanning empires that collapsed in on themselves, and they tend to be overwhelmingly powerful, overwhelmingly ahead in technology, but they don't, or they mind their own business. They don't care about the world. They've given up on the world or the galaxy, unless you accidentally activate them, and then they conquer everything. So I think that would be a really interesting one. I've not tried it. Void Dwellers, you begin in orbital habitats with the technology to build more orbital habitats, and you don't like to live on planets. I think this is really cool, and it reminds me of a book series I recently read, The Expanse, and it makes me think of the Belters. So I think that would be really cool to do one day, like a Belter-inspired run. Machine World, obviously you need to be robots, but it's a planet that's just being completely taken over by machinery, basically. On the Shoulder of Giants, you begin with an archaeology site on your planet. A Tree of Life, you have a Tree of Life on your planet, and you have to basically take it when you go and plant it on new planets. And you need to be a hive mind for this, and I think it's a really interesting idea. I would like to mess with it one day. Doomsday, your planet will explode within 35 to 45 years. Seems like an extreme... Oh, actually, it has a warning, challenging origin, because that just seems super rough. But also kind of interesting. Your capital planet isn't going to be your capital planet for long. You got to get out there. Lost Colony. You begin... You are a colony from an advanced civilization that went out, got lost contact with your main empire, and grew up and developed. Somewhere out there, your exact species exists as an advanced empire. Fascinating option. Common Ground, you begin in a Galactic Union. We'll talk a lot about federations as we go. Galactic Union is pretty much the least invasive of the Federation, the one that's the most like, oh, we'll just be peaceful, we won't get involved with things as much. or it begins that way at any rate. In my last game, I created a Galactic Union, and I slowly converted the Galactic Union to I just run the Federation and the planets under it. But that's some of the really interesting political stuff that exists. And then the one we're going with, Hegemony. You begin as the leader of a Hegemony Federation. And I'm really curious to try this. Like, it would be interesting to begin without being in a Hegemony, to form it later, etc., etc. But I am curious to try this start where you just begin with 2 close allies and in this federation. I also think you'll have an interesting balance thing, because what they've done is you get 2 allies right off the bat, 2 allied empires that are very closely tied to your culture and your species. That's a huge advantage. To balance it, you don't get... When you play one of these games, you normally begin with a guaranteed planet nearby that you can colonize, 1 or 2. These 2 allies that you begin with in a federation, they take those planets. So you are not guaranteed a colonizable planet nearby anymore, which I think is fascinating. And I'll be very curious to see how this goes for us. Government and ethics, and I've been talking about things for a while now, but this is why I'm going to make this a separate episode, so feel free to skip past if you don't find this that interesting. This is the way of defining your government and what your species believes in. You have these options so in the middle you have I don't actually know how to say that word, but it basically translates to hive mind or a single consciousness robot society. Really interesting to do. We can't do it in being in a hegemony, and we're not robots, so we won't be touching that. But then all these other ones are interesting and opposite of each other. So you have pacifists and you have fanatic pacifists, and you begin with 3 ethic points. The first one in every category costs 1, the second one costs 2 points. And they don't like the opposites. For example, pacifists don't tend to like militarists, but they might possibly be able to get along. But fanatic pacifists and fanatic militarists are going to have massive penalties against each other. Basically well, it's not impossible to get along, but it's almost impossible to get along. And you're not going to want to be in a federation together, because it's going to cause cohesion issues, which result in you never wanting to do the same thing, because one's going to want to conquer the galaxy and one's going to want to leave everyone alone. Leads to some fascinating thing. Each of these comes with bonuses. Obviously, the fanatic one comes with stronger bonuses. For example, with the militarists, the basic ones get minus 10% to claim costs, plus 10% to ship fire rate. The fanatics get plus 20 to ship fire rate and minus 20 to claim influence. Now, what I like to do is generally choose a fanatic one and a normal one to use up my 3 points. However, for this species, I went a little different, and I did 3 normal ones. I went militarists because I have this idea in my head that to make a game interesting to view, it needs to have combat and attacking. I don't think that's technically true, but that's trapped in my brain. So I wanted to be a bit more of an aggressive species. And we're trying to unite the galaxy anyway, so it will be helpful. Authoritarian, because that's just one of the things I felt was important for this. So we get more monthly influence, our workers tend to do more, and we believe in a single guiding hand. That's the core philosophy of authoritarian. And we're actually going xenophiles. And this is an interesting one for a more aggressive species, but since I want to play the Federation game, since I want to, I'm trying to unite the galaxy under one rule, this species is, but they're not trying to conquer and enslave and, do horrible things. They just have the idea, probably misguided, that their way of doing things is better. So I think xenophile makes sense. We like alien species. It's why we want to go out there and help them, help enlighten them through aggressive means. But, let's not dwell on that too much. Then you choose your government type. Some of these are restricted. For example, you can't be authoritarian, believing in one rule, and do a democratic society. They don't mix. Can't do machine intelligence, which is the one ruler, the Borg queen, so to speak. Can't do hive mind either, because it doesn't meld with what we're doing. There's corporations, which are really cool, not really my style, but just one mega corporation that owns a planet or two and builds franchises and other species. It's a great idea. We are going with Imperial, so that's the equivalent of monarchy, basically. Seems best to me. Now over here you get 2 civic points to help kind of refine how your government functions. There are lots of interesting ideas here, some of which are blocked out because of what our choices are, right? You can't have a shadow council, for example, without being something that involves voting. Because a shadow council is basically behind the scenes, actually controlling things, even though things look kind of free. It's basically a fake free society. We are going to go with Diplomatic Corps because, again, Federation uniting the galaxy gives us diplomatic weight bonus, gives us envoy bonuses or +2 to send out and convince people we're cool. We're also grabbing the Byzantine bureaucracy. This one is just kind of neat. So as you expand, your empire gains what's called Emperor Sprawl, which returns in... Basically, the bigger your empire is, the more people who live in your empire, it becomes very complex to administrate something so large as it really would be. You have to build lots of administrative centers to maintain and manage the empire, and it increases your empire sprawl. These bureaucrats just provide the bonus so that you don't have penalties for having too many planets. But by having the Byzantine bureaucracy system, they also provide us with unity and stability, which is just a really neat one. And I think it's going to fit into our society type quite well. I was also tempted to Aristocratic Elite. I haven't used this one, but I just love the idea that you get nobles. I don't know what they do. I don't know what the bonuses are, but I just think it's cool. One day I'll try that. Advisor voice, just what the guy talking to you is going to be like. Empire name, we just went with Vatnaka Empire. Flag, all sorts of cool options to build out a flag. I just went with this one. Ship, this is the final appearance thing, which again, I match to force myself to try different ones because, again, I actually really like the avian stuff, so I probably would have gone with this one if I just chose. And then finally, you get some options to customize your starting emperor, in this case emperor, your starting ruler, their name, their title, what the heir's title is. Different species have more controls. Obviously, we don't really have hair, so we can't change our hairstyle, but some of the other ones do. Now, finally, we're going to just take a really quick look at the game details. So we're going to go with a small galaxy of 4,000 or 400 stars. You can go ridiculous up to 1,000. The galaxy shape, this kind of dictates what the galaxy will look like. There's a ring, which is literally just going to be a ring of planets around your solar system. Elliptic, same thing, but stretched out as you would imagine. And spiral. There are more options if you choose the bigger galaxy sizes, but they don't function well in the small ones, so they've just cut them off. So for a small 400 star game, we are going to go with the spiral 2 arms. So think of it as like 2 arms branching out around each other. And you'll see it when we get in. 6 AI empires. One of these AI empires is going to have an advanced start. This is the idea that not all species are going to develop as quickly or have gained FTL technology as fast, and some would have a little bit of a leg up on other species. So one empire out there got out to the galaxy ahead of us and has more technology and population and a bunch of advantages. Fallen Empire, we talked about those a bit earlier. We're going to have only one of them. Basically, I'm going with the default settings, right? Marauder Empires, basically a bunch of thugs that you can pay to attack people or can be paid to attack you, and they will raid your territory. If you're unlucky, it can spawn a Great Khan, and then you get an invasion equivalent to the Golden Horde. That's not ideal, but we'll see what happens. all sorts of like cost. There's a bunch of customization. You can go the strength of what things are. We're going to go with the difficulty of captain. We're not going to have scaling difficulty on. This is an interesting one. You can begin on a low difficulty so that you can get going and feel good about yourself, but it will scale up depending on how well you're doing, and just get more and more difficult to try and keep things engaging to the end. AI is going to have a normal level of aggressiveness, lots more settings that we won't worry about. I am going to do Iron Man mode again. It is a mistake, as it is always a mistake when I'm recording videos, as we learned the hard way last time. But what if I get an achievement? It's important. So that's just what it's going to be. So I'm going to cut to in, and we'll see what sort of empire we get. Oh yeah, that's so interesting. To begin with 2 other species right there. And what are they? Let's see. Oh, another fungal race. They are spiritualists. Okay, that's fine. I was going to say that's awkward, but we're not materialists. Materialists, again, because I'm obsessed with science, I'm often playing a materialist species. So it's kind of weird I didn't select that. They're spiritualists, military, and xenophiles. Okay, that seems perfectly fine. Ruthless capitalist. Oh, they're a mega corporation. Okay, that's actually going to be kind of nice to have. They'll probably sit back and make money for everyone. Wait, hang on. They're not civics, franchising, and naval contracts. Ooh, how perfect is that? They're going to help make fleet building better. They're going to help everyone build fleets. And franchising, it's easier for them to build. The mega corporations are odd. They can build like franchises in other empires, like open up little shops, so to speak, that produce them money and help the planet that they build on. I think they're going to be actually kind of useful. They're not going to expand too much. They won't need to expand too much territory-wise. And they will just help everyone out. So that's really cool. What do we got here? The Galactic Light League. Hegemonic Imperialists. They are... Wait, are they the opposite? Any society that does not embrace equality between its members. That's a little awkward. They are the opposite of us. We are one rule. They are... they embrace equality. But we do not. They are xenophiles as well, which is great. They like other species. They're militarists as well, which is great, because we are. They have warrior culture, which is interesting. They get duelists as a job. Don't entirely know what it does, but that sounds cool. An individual social station or personal connection should have no bearing on their profession. The sole basis for an advancement in this society is demonstrated ability and talent. That's kind of a lovely idea. They are playing like a much more wholesome species than we are. Well, not really wholesome. They have militarists who want to conquer the galaxy, but that idea is a good idea. It sounds very nice and desirable. And then we are at the top of the galaxy, kind of on the in the middle of this arm. You can see the 2 arms. There's one going that way and one going this way. There tends not to be a ton of connection points between the 2, which is interesting. Okay, I think that will do for the first episode. I'm sorry for so much of that being just build up, but I'll label it that way and you guys can skip if you wanted to. So thank you everyone for watching, and I hope to see you in the next episode.